The espresso machine hissed like an angry snake as I pulled my third shot of the morning, steam curling around my face in the dim light of Maple Creek coffee. 5:30 a.m. came early in this sleepy Montana town, but the pre-dawn quiet had become my sanctuary. Outside the frosted windows, Main Street lay empty except for old Pete walking his ancient retriever, Buster, past the shuttered antique shops and hardware store that had seen better decades. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Elena Vasquez, though half the town still calls me Ellie like I'm the same 18-year-old who left for college 12 years ago. What they don't know, what nobody in Maple Creek knows, is that I never went to college. Not exactly. I wiped down the gleaming counter of my coffee shop, a ritual that helped center my thoughts. The familiar weight of my father's St. Christopher pendant rested against my collarbone, hidden beneath my flannel shirt. St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers, he used to say, for when you're far from home. I'd been wearing it for 8 years now, ever since the day I walked away from everything I'd trained for, everything I'd bled for. The bell above the door chimed, and Mayor Patricia Henley shuffled in with her usual morning scowl. At 62, she'd run this town with an iron fist disguised as friendly small-town charm for the past 2 decades. "Morning, Ellie. The usual? Please, and make it strong. Town council meeting tonight about those damn developers again." She settled her considerable frame onto the worn leather stool at the counter. "Sometimes I think this place would be better off if we just built a wall around it, kept the outside world where it belongs." I smiled, grinding beans with practiced precision. Isolation has its appeal. Patricia studied my face with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You'd know about that, wouldn't you? Been back 3 years now, and you're still about as mysterious as they come. Most folks your age can't stop talking about themselves. You barely mentioned yesterday, let alone where you've been." The grinder's noise gave me a moment to compose my answer. Patricia wasn't wrong. I'd perfected the art of deflection. When people asked about my college years, I'd mentioned studying abroad or government work, with just enough vagueness to satisfy curiosity without inviting follow-up questions. The truth was buried deeper than Maple Creek's gossip mill could dig. "Some stories aren't worth telling," I said, pouring steamed milk into her oversized mug. "Besides, I'm here now. That's what matters." She accepted the coffee with a grunt of approval. "Your father would be proud, you know. Building something of your own in his hometown. God rest his soul." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My chest tightened at the mention of my father. Staff Sergeant Miguel Vasquez, 22 years in the Army, died of a heart attack while I was deployed in Afghanistan. I'd flown home in dress blues to a funeral, where half the town showed up to pay respects to the man who'd fixed their cars for decades before retirement. They knew him as the gentle mechanic who never charged widows full price and always had candy for kids. They didn't know about his 3 bronze stars or the Purple Heart he kept in a shoebox beneath his workbench dot, just like they didn't know about the classified medals gathering dust in my own storage unit outside town. The morning rush began in earnest around 7. Maple Creek's definition of rush met a steady trickle of ranchers, teachers, and shop owners grabbing coffee before starting their predictable days. I knew everyone's order by heart. Tom Bradley wanted his coffee black with 2 sugars, no cream. Sarah Chun, the librarian, preferred a vanilla latte with oat milk. Deputy Marcus Cole always ordered a large dark roast and tried too hard to flirt, apparently convinced that persistence would eventually wear down my polite rejections. "Maybe dinner this weekend?" Marcus asked for the 10th time, adjusting his duty belt. "That new steakhouse in Billings. Thanks, but I'm swamped with inventory," I deflected smoothly. Maybe another time. He left with his usual disappointed shrug, and I felt the familiar pang of guilt. Marcus was a good man, honest, steady, exactly the kind of person someone looking to build a quiet life should appreciate. But quiet lives were for people who hadn't spent 6 years in Army Special Operations. People who didn't wake up some nights reaching for weapons that weren't there, hearts pounding from dreams filled with sand and gunfire, and the faces of people who didn't make it home. Around 10, the morning crowd thinned to its usual handful of retirees nursing single cups. For hours while solving the world's problems. I was restocking the pastry case when my blood turned to ice water. A black SUV with government plates had pulled up outside. My hands stilled on the blueberry muffins as two figures emerged from the vehicle. Even through the window's glare, I recognized the walk military bearing, disguised as civilian casualness. The woman leading wore a charcoal gray business suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her companion, a younger man in jeans and a polo shirt, carried himself with the alert posture of someone trained to assess threats. The bell chimed as they entered, and every conversation in the shop seemed to pause. Strangers always drew attention in Maple Creek, but these two radiated an authority that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. Elena Vasquez. The woman's voice carried the crisp tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. I'm Agent Rebecca Morrison, Department of Defense. We need to talk. The elderly farmers at Table 3 looked up with undisguised curiosity. Patricia Henley had stopped mid-sentence in her conversation with Doc Stevens, her political instincts sensing drama. Even the Wi-Fi-dependent college kids in the corner booth lifted their eyes from their laptops. I think you have me confused with someone else, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. I just serve coffee. Agent Morrison smiled, but it never reached her eyes. That's exactly what we need to discuss. Is there somewhere private we can talk? Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to make them explain themselves publicly, to demand they leave my carefully constructed sanctuary alone. But I'd learned long ago that when the government came calling, resistance only delayed the inevitable. Back office, I said quietly. Give me a minute to close up. I flipped the sign to closed and locked the front door, ignoring the confused protests from my customers. Patricia tapped on the window, mouthing questions I couldn't answer. My hands shook slightly as I led the agents through the narrow hallway lined with supply shelves and coffee sacks to the cramped office where I paid bills and pretended to live a normal life. Morrison settled into the chair across from my desk like she owned the place. Her companion remained standing by the door blocking my exit. I noted automatically. You've built a nice life here, Morrison said, glancing around at the coffee-stained desk and motivational calendar. Quiet, peaceful. Must be a relief after Kandahar province. The name hit like a physical blow. I'd spent 3 years trying to forget that godforsaken valley. The impossible missions, the things we'd done that would never make it into official reports. My civilian persona cracked just enough for Morrison to see through. Captain Elena Vasquez, she continued. Ranger School graduate, Special Operations Command, multiple classified commendations. You left rather abruptly in 2019, I completed. My service obligation. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Honorable discharge. Yes, but not before you walked away from a very important assignment, one that's suddenly relevant again. Morrison opened her briefcase and withdrew a tablet, swiping to display satellite imagery I recognized with sinking dread. The compound looked different, newer construction, expanded perimeters, but I'd know those mountain ridges anywhere. The Coast Province facility, she said. You spent 8 months there in 2018, working on something called Operation Silent Thunder. According to your file, you were the team's demolitions expert, and the only one who survived the final extraction. The room seemed to shrink around me. I could smell the dust and diesel fuel, Hear the distant sound of helicopters and the radio chatter that meant someone was dying. My right hand moved instinctively to my left shoulder, where shrapnel had left a scar that ached when storms were coming. "That operation is classified," I said. "I can't. The classification has been lifted, partially," Morrison's tone suggested. This was a courtesy, not a negotiation. 3 days ago, intelligence assets in the region went dark. All of them. The facility you helped build has been compromised, and we have reason to believe someone with intimate knowledge of its construction is involved. She swiped again, revealing personnel photos. Faces I recognized, men I'd served alongside, trusted. With my life. "These are the other survivors of your unit," Morrison said. 3 are dead. Killed in the past month in ways that suggest professional execution. 2 more have disappeared. That leaves you, Captain. Former Captain, I corrected. Automatically, and I didn't survive anything. I completed a mission and came home. Morrison's smile turned predatory. "Did you?" "Because according to classified communications intercepts, someone is selling detailed intelligence about U.S. black site construction to the highest bidder. Someone who knows exactly how these facilities are built, where their weaknesses lie, how to breach them without triggering security protocols." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. I felt the walls of my carefully built new life crumbling around me. "You think I'm a traitor?" "I think you're the only person alive who knows enough about Silent Thunder to be useful to our enemies. Whether that makes you a traitor or a target remains to be seen." Morrison stood, brushing imaginary lint from her suit. "We'll need you to come with us, Captain, for debriefing." "I told you, I'm not." The sound outside made us all freeze. A low, rhythmic thumping that grew steadily louder. I'd heard it thousands of times in combat zones, a sound that meant either salvation or death, depending on which side the helicopters were on. Morrison's companion was at the window. In 2 quick steps. "Ma'am, we have multiple aircraft inbound." Military configuration. Through the office's small window, I could see them now, 3 black helicopters approaching in formation, their rotors churning up clouds of autumn leaves from Maple Creek's tree-lined streets. People were emerging from buildings, pointing and pulling out phones. This kind of hardware hadn't been seen in our quiet town since the National Guard assisted with flood relief 5 years ago. Morrison was speaking rapidly into a radio. "Control. This is Morrison. We have uninvited company at the target location. Request immediate backup and extraction." The radio crackled with static and tension. "Negative on backup. All units are compromised. Get out now." One of the helicopters was descending toward the parking lot behind my shop, its downdraft rattling windows and sending debris flying. The other 2 took up flanking positions, their dark windshields reflecting nothing. "Who are they?" I asked. Though part of me already knew, Morrison's professional composure finally cracked. "The people who've been killing your former teammates. The people who want to know everything you know about Silent Thunder." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "We need to move, now." But it was already too late. The back door of my shop exploded inward with the precision of a shaped charge, and figures in tactical gear poured through the smoke. Their weapons were military grade, their movements coordinated, their faces hidden behind masks that turned them into instruments of death. The first soldier through the breach spoke with an accent I couldn't place. "Elena Vasquez, you will come with us." Morrison had her sidearm drawn, but she was outnumbered 5 to 1. Her companion was already on the ground, blood pooling beneath his head. "Captain," Morrison whispered urgently, "everything you did in Afghanistan, all of it, is going to matter again. These people can't be allowed to." The suppressed gunshot cut her words short. Agent Rebecca Morrison, Department of Defense, crumpled to my office floor between the coffee invoices and employee schedules. I stared at her body. at the blood spreading across the linoleum I'd mopped every morning for 3 years. The leader of the assault team stepped over her corpse like it was debris. "You are Elena Vasquez," he said. It wasn't a question. "Former Captain, United States Army Special Operations. You will come with us willingly, or we will take you by force. The choice is yours." Through the window, I could see confused townspeople gathering in the street. Patricia Henley stood in front of the hardware store, her phone pressed to her ear, as she undoubtedly called every emergency service in the county. Deputy Marcus Cole was running toward my shop, hand on his weapon, completely outgunned and unaware of what he was walking into. The soldier followed my gaze. "Your friends will not be harmed if you cooperate. Refuse, and this entire town becomes a casualty of war." I looked down at Morrison's body, at the woman who'd come to drag me back into a world I'd tried to escape. Then I looked out at the people of Maple Creek, the farmers and teachers and shop owners who'd accepted me without question, who'd let me build something resembling peace in their midst. The pendant around my neck felt heavier than ever. Saint Christopher, patron saint of travelers. For when you're far from home, I was about to travel farther from home than I'd ever been. "I'll come," I said quietly, "but not because you threatened them. Because whatever silent thunder really was, whatever I helped build, it dies with me before I let you use it." The soldier nodded as if he'd expected no other answer. "We shall see, Captain. We shall see." As they zip-tied my hands and led me toward the waiting helicopter, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the shop's window. The woman looking back wasn't Elena the barista anymore. She was someone harder, someone dangerous, someone who'd been hiding in plain sight for 3 years, pretending the war was over. But wars never really end. They just wait. The helicopter's interior smelled of gun oil and fear. I sat strapped between 2 masked operatives, my zip-tied hands numb from restricted circulation, watching Maple Creek shrink below us until it became just another cluster of lights in the Montana darkness. The soldier who'd spoken to me, their leader, I assumed, sat across from me, his weapon casually pointed in my direction. "Where are we going?" I asked, raising my voice over the rotor noise. "Somewhere you can be useful," he replied in that same unplaceable accent. "Eastern European, maybe Russian, but trained to speak American English. Your country built something remarkable in Afghanistan. We intend to understand how." Through the window, I could see the other 2 helicopters maintaining formation. This wasn't some hastily organized kidnapping. It was a military operation with resources and planning behind it. But who had the capability to track down scattered special operations veterans and coordinate simultaneous strikes? The answer came to me with sickening clarity. Only someone with access to classified personnel files, deployment records, and current addresses. Someone inside the system. "There's a mole," I said. The leader tilted his head slightly. "Very good. Captain, your intelligence reports were accurate. You do think tactically under pressure." "Intelligence reports?" The pieces clicked together like a weapon being assembled. "You've been watching me, all of us, for 18 months. Ever since certain parties became interested in acquiring American black site technology." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you know what your Operation Silent Thunder actually accomplished?" I knew what the mission briefings had said: establish a secure communications, relay and temporary detention facility in the mountainous border region between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Standard counter-terrorism infrastructure. But even then, I'd suspected there was more to it. "It was a prototype," I said. "Wasn't it? Very good. A prototype for next-generation interrogation facilities. Completely autonomous, powered by geothermal energy, with holding capabilities for high-value targets that could operate indefinitely without resupply. Your engineering skills helped create something revolutionary." The helicopter banked sharply, and I caught a glimpse of lights below, We were heading toward what looked like an industrial complex in the middle of nowhere. As we descended, I could make out temporary structures, vehicles, and armed personnel securing a perimeter. "Welcome to your new workplace, Captain," the leader said as we touched down. "You're going to help us build one of these facilities. Right here in America." The implications hit me like a physical blow. A secret detention facility on American soil, built using stolen military technology, operated by foreign agents. Whatever they were planning, it wasn't just about selling secrets, it was about establishing a permanent, operational base. They dragged me from the helicopter toward a series of modified shipping containers that served as temporary buildings. The complex was larger than it had appeared from the air, with dozens of personnel moving with purpose between structures. I recognized military organization when I saw it, but these weren't American uniforms. Inside the largest container, banks of computers displayed satellite imagery, architectural plans, and personnel files. My blood ran cold when I saw the familiar faces on the screens, every member of my former unit, with red X's marking the ones already dead. A woman in her 50s stood with her back to us, studying a wall-mounted display. When she turned, I nearly stumbled in shock. "Hello, Elena," said Colonel Sarah Mitchell, my former commanding officer. The woman who'd recruited me for special operations. The woman who'd pinned medals on my chest and told me I was one of the finest soldiers she'd ever served with. "You're the mole," I whispered. "I prefer to think of myself as a realist." Mitchell looked exactly as I remembered, steel gray hair pulled back severely, pale eyes that missed nothing, the bearing of someone who'd spent 30 years in the army. "Do you know what they gave me as a retirement package, Elena? A pension. That barely covers my mortgage, and a thank you for your service certificate." She gestured to the screens around us. Meanwhile, private military contractors make millions selling the same expertise I spent decades developing. Defense companies profit from technologies I helped create. Everyone gets rich except the people who actually did the work. "So you decided to sell out your country?" Mitchell's laugh was bitter. "My country sold me out first. These people," she indicated the masked operatives, "they understand the value of experience. They pay what the work is actually worth." I stared at the woman who'd been my mentor, my role model, the person who'd convinced me that serving my country was the highest calling. "You're building weapons for terrorists. I'm building tools for the highest bidder. The world has moved beyond nationalism, Elena. It's about capability. Now, not flag colors." The leader who'd brought me here removed his mask, revealing a lean face with Slavic features and cold blue eyes. "Colonel Mitchell speaks truth. America no longer has monopoly on military innovation. We simply redistribute the advantages. And if I refuse to help?" Mitchell pulled out a tablet, swiping to show surveillance footage of Maple Creek. I could see Patricia Henley locking up the hardware store, Doc Stevens walking to his car, Deputy Marcus Cole still searching the area around. "My coffee shop. Your little town has approximately 1,200 residents," Mitchell said conversationally. "All very predictable in their routines. The elementary school has about 200 children. The senior center hosts 43 residents every Tuesday for their social hour." The threat was crystal clear. Cooperate or watch everyone I'd grown to care about pay the price for my defiance. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "Build us a detention facility," the Russian said. "Here, in this location. Use your knowledge of Silent Thunder's construction to create something ... improved." He gestured to another screen showing architectural plans. The proposed facility was massive underground levels, reinforced construction, isolated cells, and interrogation rooms designed for long-term use. "Who are you planning to hold there?" Mitchell smiled coldly. "Americans who've become inconvenient to certain interests. Journalists asking the wrong questions. Politicians who won't cooperate. Military. Personnel who know too much. The scope of their ambition was staggering. They weren't just planning to build a black site. They were preparing to disappear American citizens on American soil. I'll need access to the original Silent Thunder plans, I said, buying time to think. Already arranged. Mitchell pulled up. Classified files I hadn't seen in years. Everything you'll need is here. As they walked me through their requirements, I studied the complex's layout, memorizing guard positions, equipment locations, and security protocols. The Russian, who introduced himself only as Mr. Volkov, explained that they had a deadline. The facility needed to be operational within 2 weeks. Our first guests are already selected, he said. A senator who's been investigating certain defense contracts. A reporter from the Washington Post. A few others who've outlived their usefulness. They assigned me quarters in one of the containers and a work area equipped with computers and engineering software. 2 guards were posted outside, but I was given relative freedom to move around the complex during daylight hours. Over the next 3 days I played the part of the cooperative prisoner, working on their plans while secretly mapping every detail of their operation. I identified their communication equipment, weapons storage, fuel depot, and command structure. Most importantly, I discovered their weakness. The complex was powered by a single generator farm located at the perimeter. Take out the generators and everything would go dark. Computers, communications, security systems, everything. But I needed help. One person couldn't disable their entire operation, especially not while surrounded by professional soldiers. I needed to get word to the outside, to someone who could bring real firepower to bear. The opportunity came on my 4th day, when they allowed me to use their satellite communication system to request additional technical specifications from what they thought was a defense contractor database. Instead, I embedded a coded message in what looked like routine data requests. The message went to a private email account I'd set up years ago, one monitored by my former unit commander, if he was still alive. The code was simple, something we'd used in Afghanistan when radio communications were compromised. GPS coordinates, threat assessment, and a request for immediate assistance. I had no way of knowing if the message got through or if anyone would understand it. All I could do was continue working on their facility while preparing for what I hoped would be a rescue operation. On the 6th day, everything changed. I was reviewing structural calculations when Volkov burst into my work area, his face dark with anger. "Your message was intercepted," he said. "Did you think we wouldn't monitor every communication?" My heart sank, but I kept my expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Military rescue teams are mobilizing," he continued. "Satellite reconnaissance shows increased activity at 3 different bases. Your friends received your call for help." Mitchell appeared behind him, no longer bothering to hide her contempt. "You always were too idealistic, Elena, too willing to sacrifice yourself for abstract principles. Better than sacrificing everything I swore to protect." Volkov checked his watch. "It doesn't matter. We're accelerating the timeline. The facility will be operational in 48 hours, and our first guests will arrive shortly after." They locked me in my quarters under heavy guard, but I could hear increased activity throughout the complex, vehicles moving, people shouting orders, the sound of equipment being rushed into position. Whatever response my message had triggered, they were preparing for it. That night, I was awakened by explosions in the distance. Then gunfire, automatic weapons, and the distinctive crack of sniper rifles. The rescue operation had begun. The lights in my container flickered and died as someone found the generator farm. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. I could hear my guards talking frantically into their radios, receiving no response. The door burst open, and a figure in full tactical gear appeared. For a moment, I thought it was one of Volkov's men, but then he spoke. "Captain Vasquez?" "Master." Sergeant Rodriguez, 75th Ranger Regiment. We're here to get you out. Rodriguez and his team moved with the precision I remembered from my own special operations days. They secured the container, cut my restraints, and handed me body armor and a weapon. How many of them are there? Rodriguez asked as we prepared to move. Approximately 40 personnel, mix of foreign operatives and American mercenaries. Leadership is concentrated in the command container, center of the complex. Copy that. We have 2 teams working the perimeter, 1 team securing the vehicle. Depot, your job is to stay alive while we finish this. We moved through the complex like ghosts, avoiding the main avenues where Volkov's men had set up defensive positions. The Rangers had done their homework. They knew exactly where to hit for maximum effect. At the command container, we found Mitchell and Volkov destroying computer files and preparing to evacuate by helicopter. The aircraft was already spinning. Up when we breached their position. "It's over, Colonel," I called out, my weapon trained on my former commanding officer. Mitchell looked at me with something like pity. "You still don't understand, do you? This was just one operation. There are others, facilities, networks, people who've realized that loyalty is a luxury the modern world can't afford." "Maybe," I said, "but this one ends here." The firefight was brief but intense. Volkov died trying to reach his helicopter. Mitchell surrendered when she realized escape was impossible, her expression showing more resignation than defeat. As dawn broke over the Montana mountains, I stood among the wreckage of their operation. Evidence teams were already cataloging computers and documents. Medical teams were treating the wounded. The facility that would have imprisoned American citizens would never be completed. Rodriguez approached as I watched the sunrise. "Your message." "Probably saved lives, Captain. Intelligence says they had targets picked out for next week." "I'm not a captain anymore," I said automatically. "You are today." 3 weeks later, I stood behind the counter of Maple Creek Coffee, pulling shots of espresso for the morning rush. The official story was that I'd been kidnapped by foreign agents and rescued by American forces. True enough, though heavily sanitized. The townspeople treated me like a hero, which made me uncomfortable. Patricia Henley had appointed herself my unofficial bodyguard, stationing herself at the counter every morning to glare suspiciously at strangers. Deputy Marcus Cole had finally stopped asking me on dates, apparently deciding that someone who attracted black helicopters might be too. Much excitement for small-town romance. The bell above the door chimed, and a familiar figure walked in. Rodriguez, now in civilian clothes, looking like any other customer. "Coffee?" I asked. "Actually, I'm here with a job offer," he said quietly. "New unit forming up. Counterterrorism, domestic threats, people who exploit classified information for personal gain. Could use someone with your particular experience." I considered the offer while steaming milk for Patricia's morning latte. Part of me was tempted, the chance to hunt down others like Mitchell and Volkov, to prevent future betrayals. But I looked around at my coffee shop, at the quiet life I built, at the community that had welcomed me home. "Thanks," I said, handing him a cup of coffee. "But I think I'm exactly where I need to be," Rodriguez smiled. "Had a feeling you'd say that, but if you change your mind." He left a business card next to the tip jar. After he left, I went back to my routine, grinding beans, pulling shots, serving the people of Maple Creek their daily caffeine. Through the window, I could see old Pete walking Buster past the hardware store, kids waiting for the school bus. Life continuing in its predictable, peaceful rhythm. My father's pendant felt warm against my chest. St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers. I'd traveled far from home, but I'd found my way back. Some journeys end where they began, but the traveler is forever changed. The espresso machine hissed like an angry snake, and I smiled. Some sounds I'd learned meant safety instead of danger. It all depended on where you called home. The end. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.